Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you are doing well, and today I'm finally going to be getting onto this story. So this is a story that from at least MovieWeb was released today, but this is something that I know a bunch of other YouTubers have been talking about, and I thought that I would add in my own 2 cents because I have many thoughts and many opinions about Bill Maher, but this is specifically dealing with his comments on Stan Lee and comic book fans in general. So Bill Maher himself has been viciously bashed for insulting Stan Lee and comic book fans. I mean, already from that kind of a headline, it seems like MovieWeb is trying to say, oh, the vicious attack, vicious attack. Well, no, Bill Maher has received feedback from people who are obviously ticked off for the words that he said. Bill Maher is currently being bashed on social media for his thoughts on Stan Lee and comic books. In a recent blog post, Maher took aim at comic book fans, declaring that comic books are for children and belittled the death of Lee, who died earlier this week at the age of 95. Well, obviously Bill has never actually read a comic book, or else he would know that comic books are for a wide variety of people. There are comics that are meant for children. There are comics meant for teenagers. There are comics meant for adults. There are, I mean, just like with movies, there are lots of different types of movies. Not all movies are meant for kids, even though back in the day, movies themselves were more of a spectacle than they were actual medium. They were a way for, you know, people to be entertained before a play would start. You know, they were basically these small little things that no one ever thought would actually amount to the giant blockbuster movies that we have today. And so it would be like calling movies the same way. So Bill obviously has no idea what he's talking about right here when he says that they were made for kids, on top of already belittling the death of, of Stan Lee, which again is very disturbing and disgusting for him to do so. Lee was ready to rest in a private ceremony, but a public memorial is currently being planned to properly pay tribute to the comic book legend. As Maher tries to move on from his comments, the internet isn't about to let him forget it. No, then they shouldn't. I mean, they shouldn't. Again, he has every right to say those words. Bill Maher has every right to say those words, and everyone else who's responding has every right to respond to those words and to hold him to account. Because do I think that Showtime should fire him? Did I think they should lose his job? No, because obviously his job, you know, if you've ever watched his show, is to say things that get ratings, is to say things that are controversial, because guess what? That's how he keeps himself relevant. Because he can't actually add something to the actual public discussion, he would rather say something that is so just disturbingly disgusting, especially at the time period that it was said, that at the end of the day, all that it does is get him attention, which is pretty much what he wanted probably from his comments altogether. The blog post by Bill Maher reads like one of his monologues for real time. He starts off by mentioning the death of Stan Lee, stating that he was a man who inspired millions to, I don't know, watch a movie, I guess. This is obviously a man who does not understand the power that comic books can have. Yes, a lot of people got into comics when they were younger. Yes, many of them still continue to read comic books, but for you to try to belittle comic books as a medium, to me, is very ignorant. The fact that you're trying to say that there is not a way to build a world that a book cannot build, or that even a movie cannot build in the same way, is absolutely ridiculous. Comic books can span decades. Series can span years. You know, there are so many different things that comics can do that movies, television cannot do. So for you to try and belittle the entire medium and belittle Stan Lee's impact on that medium is absolutely ridiculous. Stan Lee obviously is an iconic name in the comic book industry. You can have a discussion at another time about how much content he put forward, how much his partners put forward, and all of that stuff, because we know that that is something that people like to talk about, but not the day after his death, man. Like, I'm sorry, the day that he died, the day after his death, when people are mourning, and people, you know, he says, oh, people are mourning a guy that they never knew. That might be true, but they're also mourning a guy who created characters and created stories that they were able to connect with. So I'm sorry, but it's to me despicable and ignorant for you to actually do that, to belittle someone else's pain when you yourself just don't even understand the power that that medium that they love so much can actually have on a person's life. For me, it's always been movies. Movies have been able to take me out of my, you know, out of certain situations. When I was struggling, you know, when I was a teenager, for example, movies were my escape, and they still are an escape to this very day. And that's what they are meant to be. Comic books are the same way. Comic books allow kids, teenagers, adults of all kinds to be able to lose themselves into a story. And you're belittling it by saying, oh, I guess inspire people to watch a movie? No, no. Screw you, asshat. Like, seriously. That's just a ridiculous comment. From there, he goes on to say that comic books are for children and that since it's now socially acceptable for adults to read said books, it's led to problems in society. He ended his post by getting political. Maher had this to say: I don't think it's a huge stretch to suggest that Donald Trump could only get elected in a country that thinks comic books are important. And there is, to me, one of the biggest problems. One, saying that socially acceptable for adults to read comic books and that somehow leads to problems in society. If you want to talk about why our current society has problems, why don't you point to colleges? Why don't you point to the babying of 18 to 21-year-olds, where again they're supposed to start taking on responsibilities for themselves, but instead they're allowed to remain children because they are coddled by their college professors, because they're allowed to stay in their tiny little safe space, because they're being taught propaganda and being taught ridiculous precepts that you spout on a weekly basis. How about you look at yourself? How about you look in a mirror, Bill Maher, because you're obviously part of the problem. Now, there are some things that you say that I agree with. There are some things that I actually agree that we can find common ground on. But for you to try and say that comic books are the reason why our country is going downhill, why adults fail to grow up, you're missing the point, man. Again, if you want to understand to the T why kids, why teenagers, why young adults especially are not growing up, go to college. Look at the current state of college and higher education and how much of an absolute joke it is. That is what leads to stupidity. That is what leads to the babying of our American society, and that is what leads to an entire generation of kids that are being babied so much that they will not grow up. That is the problem. And for you to try and say Donald Trump is, the reason why Donald Trump got elected is because of comic books, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, even if you say, oh, I didn't say that, I just said that there's a correlation. The fact that you even say that there's a correlation is ridiculous. That is ignorant of so many factors. If you actually look to why people voted the way they did, and not to get into totally into 2016, but if you actually look into the polls and look into the exit poll data, comic books were never mentioned. And also, too, things like the economy and things of like their dislike of Hillary Clinton were the main primary factors that led people to vote for him. Not because they're stupid. Not because, that's to me the biggest problem. The fact that any person that's voted for somebody is labeled as an idiot, is labeled as a racist, as a sexist, just because of how they voted. Without actually looking into, well, why did they vote that way? What led them to make those decisions is absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that Stan Lee is going to try, sorry, it's not Stan Lee. The fact that Bill Maher is going to try and bring Stan Lee into this discussion and say it was because of Stan Lee and content creators like Stan Lee that led to the election of Donald Trump, and act like that is, inherently evil in some way, and also tie into the fact that comic books therefore must also be evil, and that allowing them to be accepted and, socially acceptable for adults to read is somehow dumbing down society, is a guy that's obviously never read comic books, but also, too, a guy who is just living in his own ignorant bubble of liberal SJW NPC nonsense. That is what happens, Bill. This is what happens. If you want to know why the country is not growing up, it's because of people like you perpetuating stupidity and allowing that stupidity to continue at the college education level. That is the reason why. That is the reason why we have a country where there are so many people who, even if they've gotten an education, are still extremely and vastly uneducated. Much thanks to you and people of your ilk, is all I have to say about that. But let's just finish here. Stan Lee and comic fans have not taken Bill Maher's blog post very well. One social media user called Maher a moron. I think that's a pretty good explanation as to what he is. I would say ignorant is probably the best word to use to describe him, because he is ignorant on so many different things, which is pretty tame from a lot of the other comments that have been posted. Oh, I'm sure that they have. And again, I do not condone vicious comments in the way of wishing harm on somebody, because I never want harm to befall any single person. But I do think that, Bill Maher said something ignorant, said something very stupid, and so therefore people should, and I think are obviously responding to that. And Bill Maher needs to step back, hopefully, and understand, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, and oh, maybe my thoughts aren't as smart as I think that they are. Because this is a SJW NPC liberal elite who thinks so much of himself, thinks that he is higher than everyone else, thinks that he is so much better than all the plebeians that exist out in society, all the comic book reading plebeians that exist, that he fails to understand reality. Because his reality is so warped that he's become ignorant of everything going on. But guys, what are your thoughts about this? Obviously I might be a little bit late on all of this. Obviously there are a lot of other people You know, there are a lot of people here who have responded to this. There are a lot of people who have attacked Stan Lee, who have attacked comic book fans in general. But I just think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. And the biggest thing to me that's the most insulting thing said by Bill Maher is to try and connect people's love of comic books to, one, political ideology, but two, to being to whether or not they're educated or not. Trying to say that someone who reads a comic is not educated because they have not grown up, when he is going to ignore the fact that people actually are not allowed to grow up in current colleges. But guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on this entire situation in the comments below. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. You are all amazing and beautiful people. And also, guys, please, if you have not done so already, go check out my new channel, Welcome to Asgard. That is where all of my live streams are going to be from this point forward. So if you were trying to see the movie night last night, it was because, and you were like, well, where is it? It's over on my other channel, Welcome to Asgard. So that is Welcome to Asgard. You should be able to find it relatively quickly. I'll have a link to the channel in the description of this video. But please go give a subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be notified when I go live. That's where my gaming streams are going to be, movie night streams are going to be, my usual Welcome to Asgard streams, but also I'm going to try and do some vlog content. You know, I'm going to see what I can do with that. Obviously, it might be a little slow going because I am still trying to work out mics and work out so many other things that are going on in my life right now that the vlog content might come later. But as far as live streams go, that is where they're going to exclusively be. But please, let's join me over there over at Welcome to Asgard because it's a great channel. Have a great day as always, and God bless.